Well, welcome again to Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment Virtual Conference. I'm Bob Ailes, I'm your moderator. Don't forget about the Wall Street Journal, our sponsor this year. They have another workshop at noon Central today. And I know yesterday it was really interesting. It'd be worth your time, at least this for a few minutes, stop by. Also, we've got the recordings from the sessions. If you've missed any the past couple of days, you'll see view recording next to it, meaning the recordings are available. Uh, so our session today is setting up online group work for success. And I know usually when faculty tell students about a group project online, they aren't like overjoyed about it. So we have Lee Wood with us, who's an assistant teaching professor at the University of Missouri. She specializes in interactive and inclusive teaching strategies. So, hey, Lee is
Hi, Kelsey, my co-presenter is not able to make it today. She has to be an instructor. She's got to run clinicals. So Kelsey is one of our newer faculty, but she was actually a previous student of mine. So she has been in my courses with group work, and now we teach together. And so I invited her to this presentation because I thought she had a unique perspective. So I've included her notes in it, and I'll try to do my best to represent her.
Okay, great. Well, Lee, let me turn it over to you then.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Again, my name is Leah Wood. I'm an instructor at the School of Nursing at Mizzou, and I teach in a variety of programs. So I teach in the undergrad, which is more traditionally face-to-face, but then I also teach in our RN to BSN program, which is an online program, as well as our graduate DNP program, which is an online program. And in these programs, just like with healthcare, it's important to be able to work as a team. A lot of our curriculum is based around patient care and health outcomes, which lends itself really well to case studies, which is ideal for group work. And so when I started taking over these classes, we were looking at ways to get away from discussion boards. I call it death by discussion boards, not that they don't have a time and place, but how to do something more interactive, more engaging, like you would have in a face-to-face setting, but bring that to the virtual environment. And so we piloted this back in 2018, and we've been kind of adapting it into other courses ever since. So I'm going to give you some strategies on how to set up your courses to have group work that students actually enjoy. Because as Bob said, most of the time when there is a group project, I'm going to hide my meeting controls. Sorry here. There you go, so you can see my screen. Most of the time when there's a group project, you get groans from students because they feel like they're going to be the ones doing all the work. Someone just drops out, never shows up again. And I teach nursing, and healthcare providers tend to be, what's a nice way to say, very type A personalities. They like to have control of the whole situation. So the idea of doing group work and their grade being dependent on someone else is not really great for them. When you add in the fact that these are online learners who are used to things that are asynchronous so that they can fit it into their busy lives, they really begin to not like group projects. And so we had to strategize a way that would help the students be able to still work together on their own schedule and have a good experience so they weren't just dreading it the whole time. And I have to say, we were successful. So this is just some feedback from students. I'm selling my point to you right now, that I learned that group work is not always bad and it can actually be enjoyable. It's fun, everyone got involved. I was dreading this group activity because I was unsure if my group members would prepare, but they did, and we're all in charge and it went well. So I really enjoyed it. So this is really nice feedback to hear from students that is not just my perception that I think like the group work's going really well. They are actually coming away from the course like, wow, I like group work. So your first steps in deciding what type of group work you are going to incorporate into your course and what type of group work is appropriate for your course is you have to look at your objectives. What are you wanting them to get out of it? And then you can determine what type of teamwork best fits. So there's two big types of group work. There's cooperative group work and collaborative group work. Cooperative group work is more like that divide and conquer, where everyone takes a part and at the end they all throw it together. Whereas collaborative is more they're interweaving, they're having to work together. It's a little bit more of an actual team process. There's a time and place for both. If something is a little bit more knowledge-based and just kind of like, here are some definitions, maybe here's a study guide that I'm giving this group to tackle, the cooperative group work would be appropriate. But if you're really wanting them to solve a problem, then you're going to want collaboration. Collaborative group work, they have to trust each other. They have to have a shared vision and values. They have to feel like they are part of a team, but also that they have the ability to make decisions. So they need that sense of autonomy. And this works really well for two specific kind of brain thoughts, but really they're the same thing. So the type of activity that I'd recommend doing collaborative group work with is problem-based learning. And yesterday I actually heard a term I had never heard before, wicked problems, from Heather Keith's presentation. And basically these are messy, ill-defined problems that the group has to work through. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's a complex problem, multifaceted, where everyone brings in kind of a different perspective. They bring in their different strengths, and they come up with multiple solutions, and they really have to work together. So it's not just a, what's the definition of this? Let me fill in the correct answer. There is no correct answer. It's just this messy problem that the students are given the chance to explore, to research on their own, to work through, to come up with brainstorming solutions, and then present a final product. So really, wicked problems and problem-based learning to me is one and the same concept, but these lend themselves really well to collaboration. So I value it, and I hope after this presentation you will too, but students, as we talked about, they don't always love the idea of group work for a variety of reasons. Mostly it comes down to a power and control thing, right? They just want to get the answers, get their A and get out. But I have to sell it to my students of like, why are we doing these group projects, right? Why not just take the test and get the A? And so this is the kind of the message that I put out to my students to stress to them the importance of why we're doing these group work. And so we designed the course to have teamwork because it will help them develop interpersonal skills. I have found, especially through the pandemic, students are having a hard time interacting with each other because we were so distant for so long. It's hard to collaborate. They've lost some of those important life skills of good communication and conflict resolution. And so part of the purpose of this teamwork is to help them develop those interpersonal skills, because that's what healthcare is, right? It's teamwork. And we expect our patients to trust us with their life. And that's the whole healthcare team, nurses, doctors, PT, OT, dietitian, even housekeeping services. Everyone is a team working together for this patient, and they trust us with their life. So we should be able to work together and trust each other with our grade. And additionally, in our courses tend to be kind of large, and online, it can feel a little scary and distant, like you kind of feel like you're all alone. So by building in these teamwork activities for the group, hopefully that they'll build a support network for each other. So they'll have someone to go to throughout the course, and then hopefully that friendship and that bond continues throughout the program, and they have someone to go to even for little things like, oh my goodness, when's this due? Or, hey, I didn't understand the instructions to this assignment. Like, hopefully they create a bond. So there's lots of reasons why we do the teamwork. And so again, as an instructor, I have to convince my students this is why we're doing it. And so if you're thinking about doing group work, get your sales pitch ready, because again, group work elicits those groans. We got to make them excited, or at least convince them why it's a good idea to do the teamwork. Another important aspect for teamwork is that we as instructors have to trust our students. And so when we're designing these projects, we really do need to give our learners control to an extent over the assignment, but also control over their group dynamics. And I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated with group work, is so they feel like they have no power. They feel that, you know, they'll do their task, but that they can't do anything if so-and-so doesn't do their part. Or if they don't agree with what someone did, they don't feel like they have the right to give them feedback or to critique them. So they feel powerless. And that is part of the reason why they hate group work, because they feel like their grade's dependent on something that they have no control over. So when you are developing group work, it's important to give them control over their group dynamics. And the way I do this is at the very beginning of the semester, they establish a group dynamics and collaboration contract. And this lays the groundwork for the rest of the semester. And this is a template, and I'll share it at the end. This is a template that they agree upon as a group, they fill out. I give them prompts, but they come to the terms of how they want to do it. So the contract starts off, again, it's done first week of the semester, so they all get to know each other. It creates a support structure for them. I tell them this is really your chance to like set yourself for success. This is where you get to get everything out on the table. Here's what I expect. Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's our, our goal going forward. So we're creating support structure, laying out explicit expectations. I always say that expectations are uncommunicated expectations are the thief of joy. So this is their chance that if they have an expectation, they need to explicitly lay it out in their group dynamics contract. They need to set deadlines. So there are some deadlines that they don't have control over, right? So the final product for the class, but maybe they have the deadline of our first draft is going to be due by this time to each other. Then you're going to provide peer review feedback by this time. So they get to set like the deadlines for contributions and communication. I also make them do pivot plans and discuss consequences of broken contracts. And I'll go into these a little bit more in detail. So start off, always try to find something that brings people together. So the beginning of the contract is to find stuff that you have in common. 3 things that unite everyone in your group. This is easier with smaller groups, obviously. Ideal group size is about 4 to 5. Once you start getting into the 6, 7, 8 numbers, it gets a little chaotic. So ideal group size is 4 to 5 students. And they need to find stuff that they all have in common. So maybe it's hobbies or interests or shows. I always like the fashion trends that should stay extinct because as the semesters go on, they keep bringing back the things that other semester said should stay extinct. It's kind of funny. Just anything that gives them a sense of bonding, a sense of unity, a sense of community. Because again, that's one of the goals of teamwork is to build that sense of community. Then they get to discuss their own strengths. And so at the School of Nursing, we have everyone take strengths finders. And so they have their top 5 strengths with that. So they can use those. If you've never done strengths finders, Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies is a good quiz. It kind of gives you an insight to what type of personality you have. And I think it's important that people share their strengths because it takes all types, right? Everyone has something unique and special they can bring. They can't be great at everything. And so it's important that they discuss these ahead of time. For example, I'm a decent leader. I don't mind taking control. I don't mind presenting. I don't mind questioning. On the other hand, I am terrible with editing and grammar. If you ask me to look over APA, just don't, because it's going to get points marked off because my brain does not see the minutia detail of APA. So I would contribute. These are my strengths. Like I'm an ideas person. I'm not so good with the itty bitty detail stuff, right? So they all contribute that. Then they have to work out a communication plan. And because these are asynchronous students, a lot of them are working full time, they have families, they have other obligations outside of school. And so it's really important that they set up a communication plan. And in that, they need to talk about how they want to best communicate. Most groups I found really like GroupMe, but again, it depends on the generation of the learner and their preference. Some do just a group text. And then they also need to think about when am I not available? So, my kid has dance from this time to this time. Do not expect me to be available. Or on the weekends, I focus on my family. I'm not going to check my email over the weekend. So when can they not be bothered? Then also, when are the good times to contact? How soon do you have to respond, right? Some groups decide they want instant communication, right? So if I message you, you should respond within 2 hours. Other groups are like, get back to me within 2 days. So again, the groups get to decide what works for them in their communication plan. And then if there's any absences, so a lot of times as instructors, we complain like, oh, so-and-so scheduled a wedding in the middle of the semester. With these type of group projects, it's not that big of a deal if they did, because they can tell their group, hey, I'm going to be out for this week doing a wedding, but I will work double time the next week. And the groups can work out the dynamics and be flexible with each other without us as instructors having to set the rules and oh, well, no, you didn't participate this week. The group already is aware of it and they've made a flex plan for it. And then again, preparation. So I find that an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. So they need to, in their group contract, talk about things like stressors, how are they going to manage things? And they don't have to, they can only like share what they're comfortable sharing. But if they're like, you know, I have a sick family member, they may want to share that in their group contract so people know, okay, she's, you know, not going to be available for this time. They also need to develop a pivot plan. And this happens, we've been seeing it happen more and more since COVID. Students will start and, you know, our students are maybe working because healthcare has been slammed. So instead of working 40 hours a week, maybe they've been working 60 to 80 and they're like, I just can't handle, you know, being in school and working 80 hours a week. So I need to drop the course. So let's be proactive at it. What's going to happen if a person in your group drops? Like, how are you going to pivot? How are you going to shift the give them you also give them a chance to talk about like, what are you excited about in the course? What are your apprehensions? Because a lot of times you'll find that they'll have shared things they're excited or shared things that they're nervous about, usually the exams. And then they need to set their expectations. So again, how quickly are they supposed to respond? And then are there any pet peeves? So this is, again, setting those expectations for success, getting it all out there in the open, rather than waiting till you're super annoyed at your group mate for not doing something that they had no idea that it drove you crazy that they did this. Like, I had a student who absolutely could not stand it when people gave her, corrected her grammar. It really irked her. That would be something that should have been put in her pet peeves, to let people know like, hey, I have a hard time accepting criticism with this. Of course, you have to be aware that you have pet peeves, but it helps to set those expectations as explicitly as possible. And then the most important part of the group dynamics contract, and this is the only part that if they don't complete, I send it back to them. I say, no, you have to fully flesh this out. It's how to handle the conflict if expectations are not met. If the contract is violated, you know, what they said they were going to do did not happen, what's going to happen? And so the group gets to decide these, and that way they don't come running to me, you know, Dr. Leah, so-and-so didn't do their work, like punish them. I'm like, no, let's go back to your group contract. What did you all discuss? So if someone isn't doing their fair share, how many warnings are they given? How is this communicated to them? In other words, like, does the whole group have to agree before they approach them? When would you involve faculty? How maybe will you switch workloads? Maybe you'll go back and revise the group contract. And then ultimately, what are the consequences? That's what it comes down to at the end. What's going to happen if so-and-so does not do their part of the assignment and they do not respond and they are just flat out not participating? What is the consequence for them? And so the group needs to decide that before the situation arrives, right? So what is going to be the point deduction? And I won't let them say, oh, well, then we'll send it to the instructor and they can decide what's fair. No, this is on the group. The group gets to decide, okay, if you do not participate for this module, then you don't get any of the points for the module, right? So the group has the power to make these point decision deductions. And they don't want to do it because we go into group activities, right, with the best intentions. You know, everyone's going to do their fair share, right? We're all professionals, we're all adults. Life happens. You know, this particular class may not be priority for that person. It is what it is, but the group has to figure out how they're going to handle that. And it's, again, better to do this in advance. And I give the groups complete autonomy for it. It is completely up to them how they handle the situation. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about conflict in a little bit. So once they establish their group dynamic contract and everyone agrees on it and it's submitted, then I give them a low stakes introductory assignment. And this gives the groups a chance to like work together, see how they fit, see how things flow in a low stakes way. So when I say low stakes, I mean not worth very many points, not a very intense project, just something kind of light and fun. This is also a great chance if you're doing different technology in the class. This is a great chance to introduce that technology. For example, I do concept maps in a lot of my problem-based learning courses. And so we use a product called Coggle. It's free, it's through Google. It's a mind mapping software. So I give them an opportunity to practice using Coggle with their group so they can get used to it. And I give them what I call a curiosity Coggle. And basically they just go through each module topic and they think of some questions that they might have about the different body systems as we go, right? So kind of gets them interested in the class. It gives them a chance to bond. It gives them a chance to use the technology. And you'll be amazed. That's when you start seeing like, oh, so-and-so does not respond, or, so-and-so does not know how to use the technology, or maybe someone doesn't upload the assignment as they said, or maybe they realize, oh, we didn't assign anyone to upload the assignment. So it helps work out a lot of those group kinks early on in a low stakes, fun way. Oh, fun's a relative term. One of the other most important things is to set a code of intention. So in addition to the group dynamics contract, I always put a code of intentions before every group activity, and it's the same one before every group activity. You can, depending on the size of your class, you can actually have an activity where they build their code of intentions together. So then it kind of becomes group shared norms. These are just the ones that I use, observe and listen carefully, be curiously present, withhold judgment, challenge your assumptions. I talk about, the learning edge is the most uncomfortable part of learning. So you're going to have to embrace that discomfort of not necessarily having the answers, not being the expert, not being in control. Embrace that discomfort and learn from both your peers and from the project, see what it has to give you. And then most importantly, exercise kindness. So then my other secret to success on group activities is a self-reflection that the students do after each group work opportunity. So this is, I deliver it through Qualtrics, but you could use any platform that you want. I like Qualtrics as a survey software. It makes really nice reports for me as an instructor to read through. But they do a self-reflection because self-reflections are important for problem-based learning, for developing that metacognition and really understanding the project itself. But it also gives them a chance to reflect on their group work, their own actions and contributions. It gives them a chance to air any grievances that they might have, to give me as an instructor feedback. It's kind of like doing these instead of just doing a mid-semester check-in and then a final evaluation at the end, you're giving them tiny points throughout the semester to give feedback. And this helps improve the morale of the class because they feel heard, but it also really does help them process through some of those things that happen with interpersonal development. So first I have them reflect about the group project, and these are just some sample prompts. So I asked them, what went well? What are you proud of? Where did you and your group make the most progress? If you didn't get things correct, where did you go wrong? So give them a chance to talk about the project itself, and then give them a chance to talk about the group's dynamics. So how do you feel that your group did overall? How did you support each other? Were there conflicts? So a lot of times, we tend to, as humans, we don't like conflict, right? And so we tend to take things and let them bottle up inside of us until we explode. So ask them to think, okay, well, was there any conflicts or concerns that you had? Did you refer back to your group contract? Did you express that you were concerned or frustrated? If you didn't express that you were frustrated, what held you back? So they have to do some internal processing of, yeah, I was really annoyed that so-and-so, waited to the last minute, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be rude. So it helps them recognize how they cope with things themselves and how they handle. And then, of course, failing forward, asking them, what strategies will you take forward? What did you learn from this? Like I said, it gives them a chance to air their grievances about a classmate. But it also, I always add in a question about kudos. Did anyone in your group really impress you? How can you take what they did and apply it into your own life, right? So it gives them a chance to lift each other up and also to learn from each other. Again, I have type A learners, and they tend to be a little narcissistic, and they are used to very much being the lead. They're used to being the person that people come to for advice. They are not used to being the person who needs advice. And so, even with this kudos prompt, they're having to give someone else a compliment and say, wow, this person does something better than me, and I really like that. I would like to include that in the way I handle group work or in the way I approach a problem or whatever the case may be. And then I give them a chance to also talk about, was anyone in your group not participating, not doing what you said in your group contract? And then I give them the option to have me contact them. Do you want me to contact and help you work through it? 9 times out of 10, they will say, yes, there's someone, but no, I don't want to disclose who they are. I want to see how it plays out. Maybe it'll be better next module. No, I don't want contacted. And so I respect their wishes and I don't contact them. However, I make a little note to myself to make sure I look at their next evaluation, because that's where I start seeing recipes for disaster. It's like, no, I'm frustrated, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And those are usually the people that later they have an explosive group conflict. So those are the people I keep tabs on a little bit more. If a student does say, you know, yes, I would like to talk to you, or I'm really frustrated with my group member, I need to be there as an instructor to work with them, to help them through it, because I think that this is part of my role as a leader, is to help them build these interpersonal skills, but it is not to solve their problem for them. So I approach them that, you know, conflict is unavoidable. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be toxic. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. Conflict is just a natural part of life. So these are kind of the things I work through them, and I can meet them over Zoom, but most of the time this ends up being an email. So you get to see my email here. So I have them review the expectations of the group dynamic contract and then reflect, is someone in your group maybe interpreting this expectation differently? Reflect on your own, is something going on in your life that might be influencing your perception, right? So are you having a really stressful week where you feel like you're carrying the load at home, you're doing everything for everyone, and this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back? So I have them do some self reflection on that, because a lot of times we do internalize, like we think of our own, we judge ourselves by our own intentions, but we judge someone else by actions. And so it's important to help them process through that maybe this person isn't trying to be rude, they're not trying to destroy the group, they are, you know, perhaps coming from a different angle. But overall, the most important thing that they need to do then is to communicate. And so when I say you'll, the student needs to start the conversation, and then with the group, it needs to be honest and direct. They can choose to have like a group Zoom, they can choose to do it over email, over text. It's, again, I give them autonomy, I trust them. But they just need to be very calm and direct and to the point, no passive aggressive, like, this is what's bothering me, this is why it's bothering me, this is what I'd like to see changed, or what I'd like to see improved. And then actively listen, you know, give people a chance to explain their side of the story, and then as a group collaborate to find a solution. And it may mean that they need to amend their contract, maybe it's not working. If it's absolutely necessary, I let them know that I will be there, and I can help step in, I can help do a group, but I need to help them learn how to do it on their own first. So they have to try it on their own first. If that is unsuccessful, then I will step in and I'll do kind of a group mediation. But I would say most of the time, this little script here helps, and things improve and they get better. And so also I set the expectations with the group. So through this periodic feedback, it gives me the chance to check in on the group development. I do let them know that, you know, most of the time when you do these conflict resolution strategies, it helps and your group moves towards the better, because maybe we didn't realize or we had a miscommunication. So most of the times things pivot back to the right direction. And that's part of group development. So I explained this to them that, you know, groups have to form. Sometimes they storm where, you know, personalities clash, expectations aren't met, and then they normalize, and then they get to the end where they can perform. Every once in a while, there's a group that is just toxic. It is just not a good blend of personalities. You know what? That happens. That's life. And I've only had this happen twice in my 10 years of doing group projects. Twice I've had to dissolve a group because they got to the point of incivility. So sometimes, yes, you do have to just break a group apart, but most of the time you can coach them through the stages of group work development. And in the end, you have a really positive product. So the students' feedback is one of the things I treasure the most about these, because it's reassuring to me that group work is important and it can be beneficial and it can be enjoyable. And so like to see their insight, their aha moments go from I hate group work to yes, teams that are able to work together are efficient and powerful. I wouldn't be able to solve these cases if I didn't have my team. The teamwork created extrinsic motivation for the classmates. We were all counting on each other. And my favorite is I learned that it's okay not to know the answer, because group work is beneficial in certain areas. We can, build and work with each other. So I think that feedback is just wonderful for them. So I'm gonna pop my group dynamics contract. It's a Google template. Feel free to borrow it. I'm going to pop that into the chat for anyone who would like it. And then any questions you have or comments or concerns or things that you've tried or. There we go. Sorry, I know I talked fast. That was a lot of information all at once. You're welcome. Yes, I'd be glad to share the PowerPoint as well. Bob, what would be the best way to get that to everyone? I mean, I think I can upload the file, but.
If you give me the file, I'll
Okay.
post it with the additional information. So go to your site, go to your presentation, the schedule, click more, and then it'll be on the next page to download.
Okay. Okay, great. So has anyone done a group project that maybe didn't go so well and you would like some strategies or to talk through? Like what hiccups did you encounter? Or do you have a project that you think would be good as group and want to just bounce ideas? I like these sessions for like the collaboration.
I guess they've all gone terrific for everybody. Yeah. I may have missed it, but how are the groups determined? How do you select who's in what group? Do you do it
Good question.
randomly or look for?
Most of the
different
time it's
personalities?
randomly. So our learning management system is Canvas. So I just have groups assigned randomly. The only time it's not is when I have a course that has multiple sections. So I might have like an honor section and a section for like students who are in the DNP program versus the MSN program. And then I try to keep them in those sections. Other than that, it's just random. Comment, initially my experience was a failure. I realized it took a great deal of facilitation. What percentage of students of your success do you feel is your facilitation? I think it's more about helping them set those clear expectations at the beginning, and giving them, again, they like power and control, right? And they're adult learners, right? We should trust them to learn. And so I think the big thing is transferring the power to them to make their own decisions and to establish their group norms. I think that is the most important part. And then also listening to their feedback, getting their feedback frequently, and intervening when I can. So if I start hearing a grumble in their self-reflections, sometimes I'll reach out and be like, hey, just checking in. I noticed that you seem frustrated about this. Would you like to talk about it a little bit more? I will say that it can be a little bit time consuming, but usually like if I have a class of 25 groups, okay, so 25 groups of 5 students, I will maybe only have 1 or 2 groups that semester that take up that extra energy where I have to go through all the hoops of conflict resolution. And I provide them the conflict resolution as part of their group resources at the beginning of the semester. Like I give them as a tool, but as we all know, they don't maybe necessarily go and look at their resources. So I will remind them, hey, don't forget you have these tools at your disposal. Yeah, the peer review helps. You can also give them a chance. I find it difficult, but you can build in like the peer review chance in your learning management system where they can review each other. But I also, so like with group projects, because I think someone was asking about that. So what are the projects? So most of my courses have like about 6 projects throughout the semester. So they've got 6 modules or 6 PBLs or 6, whatever the case is. And I do a reflection after each one. But in the module itself, they have to come up with solutions, they have to come up with answers, all this stuff. They have to review each other's work, because in the end they get the same grade. Everybody in the group gets the same grade. And so they're responsible for reviewing each other's work. And so they're providing that important peer feedback, which is another one of those interprofessional skills, or interpersonal development skills that they need to learn, is how to give constructive criticism. So they review themselves that way before they submit their final product. And then they do the self-reflection over the whole product after each one. So it'd be 6 times throughout the semester. Yeah, the specific questions help a lot. A lot of times we just, we're so task oriented, right? We do a task and we're like, okay, it's accomplished, I'm done, I'm moving on to the next thing because we're busy. But really taking that time to self-reflect, and then they're like, oh, okay, this did frustrate me, or this didn't go well, but maybe I could have done this better. So I think it's a really important part of the development process. And yes, I cannot stress the group dynamics contract and really put teeth into it. Because again, a lot of groups will be like, well, we won't worry about that till it happens. I'm like, no. If pandemic has taught us anything, you have a game plan. You have things that, they're set and they're going to go into place as soon as this happens. We have clear expectations. I'm kind of on a personal note, kind of dealing with an interesting situation. We have a homeowners association contract, and it says, you will not do this, you will not do this, you will have this type of mailbox. But there's no teeth at the end of the contract to, if you don't do these things, here's the consequence. And so guess what? No one in the neighborhood is doing the contract because there's no teeth to it. So it's very important in the contract that there are set expectations, but also consequences if those expectations are not met.
Like in the real world, you're working on a group project, it's your job. Eventually, if you fail to do your job, you're out of your job. I mean, that's part of learning to be an adult, right?
Yep. And for us in patient care, the patient doesn't care who does what necessarily. They care about staying alive and having a positive health outcome. So, that's how I try to teach them to work together as a group. It's not that you all have to be experts at everything. You all have to contribute and work together because this is the outcome. And if you can't do that, then there are real consequences for that person.
Yeah, the stakes are a little higher there, aren't they?
Yep. And I'll put my email down in the chat. If anyone wants to email, I'll be glad to send you any of my templates or Qualtrics surveys. I don't know. If you haven't seen Qualtrics yet, I love it. It's wonderful for this particular thing. And actually is integrated into Canvas. So that works well for us.
Hi, I have a question if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay, so I just started the semester where we are 2 weeks in, and my students are embarking on a 16-week group project. And I wish I'd seen your presentation like a month ago. What do you recommend? The syllabus is kind of set. I can move things around. What do you recommend? If I could do one thing right now, what should I do to help them be more cohesive and ready to work together? Having to do the contract, maybe?
I think the contract, yeah. Okay. I know they've already kind of started, but you could even phrase it as okay, now you're 2 weeks in, you kind of see how you work together. Now let's get, a nice contract going so that we can produce the best product possible and have the best experience possible. Because they might now be a little bit more aware of oh man, I am worried that this person's not going to do their thing. So I'm going to make sure that I add that in as to expectations.
Yeah, I really like that communications portion, especially because, I have students email me and they're like, so-and-so is not responding. And I'm like, what do you want me to do?
Right.
I could also email them too, I guess. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. I really appreciate all your resources. This gives me some great ideas, especially for the next time I teach the class.
Good. I'm glad. Okay, can I talk about the specific consequences? Yes. So if someone doesn't respond or do the group work, then the group decides the penalty, but they need to decide it up front. So it needs to be like a proactive, not a reactionary thing, because then it becomes very personal, right? It's like, I'm mad at Anne. I'm going to pick on you, Anne. I'm mad at Anne, so she doesn't deserve any points because I'm personally mad at her. Instead, it's the whole group deciding, if so-and-so has received warnings and they are still not doing what is expected of them, then they do not get any points, or maybe they get a 5-point deduction, 5% deduction, whatever the group wants to come up with, and then we just stick by that. But yes, the group does get to decide. Which later sometimes they regret their decisions because they'll be like, no, we don't want anyone to lose any points, and I'll be like, okay. But right, failing forward, it's one of those, they learn best by doing, right? Okay, do I let them negate the contract? To an extent. So if they're having a problem with a group member, I don't necessarily know about it. If they choose to disclose it in their self-reflection or choose to reach out to me, then I don't necessarily know. But yes, they have the power as a group to change their contract if they want, but it needs to be a whole group decision, right? It can't just be like one of the 5 is like, well, I want to change it now because I'm losing points. So if the group's like, okay, so I had a student who was diagnosed with cancer this past semester, and they missed 2 of the 6 modules because they're in the hospital, their life has been upended. Their group chose to, basically forgive them of the group work, and they didn't lose any points. So they still got full points on the project, even though they were missing in action. But then when that person came back, she was able to contribute more. So yes, the groups, again, they have autonomy to choose and to flex and to pivot. But it gives them at least a starting point that they can all agree on. And I think I find most groups are pretty flexible, just like we are I feel like as humans in real life, right? If someone's got a life crisis, if they let their group know, like, oh my goodness, I've got, like, I'm drowning right now, like, I've got so much on my plate, the group is usually fine and like, oh, take this week to yourself. Like, it's fine. I'll take over your work. Cause I do the same thing for my coworkers, right? If someone's like completely stressed, I help them out. And that is more productive than that person just being overwhelmed, dropping off the grid and abandoning everyone. Instead, it's a team effort and people are more than happy to step in 99.999% of the time.
Ever have, because of the random draw, a group where, say, everybody was passive, or the flip side, a group where maybe you've got a one with a personality that just dominates everybody?
Yes, to both. So some groups just are also passive, that they do end up having a poor experience because no one will admit that they're unhappy, even they won't admit it in their self-reflections. I've also had groups where like there's one particular person who is just over the top and bossy and controlling, which says a lot because these are generally controlling people. And so if that's the case, like, again, they have the chance in that self-reflection to reach out, like, this isn't necessarily violating our group dynamics contract, but I really don't like the way that this person handles it. I go back to those conflict resolution strategies. I'm like, okay, well, let's approach the person. Let's work. So I work with the groups to help, or whoever reaches out, like, to help talk to that person. Because that's just an inevitable part of life, right? Sometimes I have an overly dominating personality. So people got to learn how to talk to me and put me in my place or let me know how I'm making them feel, So it's a lot of life coaching. Like, I kind of joke that half of what I teach is like pathophysiology and the other half is how to be a human. But it's those life skills that really are so important for, success out in the real world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I go back to, you're teaching them not just the content in the course, you're teaching them skills that hopefully will pay off after they leave school.
Yep, exactly. Yes, yes, we'll go boundaries. Yes. Oh, and I will say, I also am very cognizant to do that with my own course and syllabus too. So, you know, I have them set up their group dynamics contract of here's, you know, what their communication plan is. I also tell them about mine. Like, here are times I'm most available. I will respond to you by this and this time. Please do not text me at 11 o'clock at night, you know, things like that. So I set my own boundaries and my own communication plan. I make them just as explicit with my students. Because some students do expect instant feedback. Like they'll text you at 1 in the morning and you didn't answer me. Nope, it was 1 in the morning. Well, I hope this was helpful. Thank you all so much for your participation. And I think I'm presenting in on the 17th. I think that's the Friday. Again on something else. So hopefully I'll see you again for that too.
Leah, thank you for doing this.
You're
And
very welcome.
it's a great subject. And yeah, I think everyone from time to time struggles with how to, you know, create effective groups.
It's all about the expectations. Well, thank